From the slick swinging scenes that made The Amazing Spider-Man an awesome film, to the Battle of Borodino in War and Peace Part 3, these are the most expensive stunts in Hollywood history. Let's kick things off with one of the best Spider-Man movies ever created, 2012's The Amazing Spider-Man. Film star Andrew Garfield's rendition of the friendly neighborhood superhero received fantastic reviews when it first released. But the sheer amount of money the studio spent on stunts is unbelievable. To achieve ultimate realism during the swinging scenes, the directors went all out, using a series of complex aluminum rigs, which allowed Andrew to propel through the air as if he were actually Spider-Man. Garfield was able to travel 40 miles per hour and experience 3 Gs of force. So how much did all of this cost? Well, the exact figure for the swinging stunts hasn't been disclosed, but the total budget for the movie was around $230 million. And you can bet that a lot of that money went into Andrew Garfield's swinging stunts, making it one of the most expensive stunts in Hollywood history. And to be fair, the money spent was absolutely worth it. The Amazing Spider-Man arguably has the best swinging scenes out of any Spider-Man movie, and even the MCU's take with all their money couldn't top Sony's version. Another Marvel movie that had seriously expensive stunts was Iron Man 3. Now, it's no secret that this movie wasn't the best in the series, but it was the most expensive. The scene where the president and his cabinet were sucked out of the Air Force One jet cost a whopping $120 million for one scene. So why did this stunt cost so much? Well, for starters, all of the actors had to learn how to skydive, jumping as much as 8 times per day. There were also various CGI and physical prop stunts, as well as the cost of renting specialized cameras needed to capture such an awesome stunt. This all added up pretty quickly, making Iron Man 3 one of the most expensive movies that Marvel's ever created. But for now, let's move on to one of Marvel's biggest rivals, DC's billionaire playboy superhero, Batman. There's been plenty of Batman movies throughout the years, but one of the most popular installments was Christian Bale and Christopher Nolan's version. In the last movie of the trilogy, The Dark Knight Rises, Nolan went all out with the stunts. Right at the start of the movie, Big Baddie Bane hijacks a plane in mid-air, flips the aircraft vertically, and Bane ends up dangling from a rope. This scene was epic. But the way in which the scene was filmed is even more impressive. Nolan was adamant about creating the scene in real life and didn't use a single piece of CGI, which meant a substantial amount of money was spent on the scene. I mean, all the actors had to learn the necessary safety precautions, the planes had to be rented, rigged up correctly, and over 3 months of planning went into the scene. Safe to say that the costs racked up significantly and made up a very large proportion of the $276 million budget. Fair play, Nolan. He could have made the movie for substantially less, but the realism in scenes like this make the film so much better. So we've looked at superheroes, now let's look at super spies, like Tom Cruise, who's played Ethan Hunt in several Mission Impossible movies. The most expensive scene out of this entire series occurred on the set of Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. You know the scene I'm talking about, when Ethan's forced to free climb up the Burj Khalifa to gain access to the hotel's server room. To prep for this intense scene, Tom Cruise practiced for months on a replica part of the building, spending up to 10 hours a day climbing in Dubai's hot sun. When it came to the real thing, Cruise was harnessed to the building and had to climb several floors without falling. The wires were then edited out in post-production to create the most memorable scene in the Mission Impossible franchise, and maybe even Tom Cruise's career. Because this stunt was so crazy, a lot of money went into it. The total budget for the movie was $145 million, and a significant chunk of cash went into this one scene. But if you thought that stunt scene was epic, wait until you get a load of this one. It happened on set of 2003's The Matrix Reloaded. Now, this was 20 years ago, and CGI was not at the level that it is today. So, to create awesome stunts, the directors had to film all the stunts in real life. The most expensive stunt of them all was the freeway chase scene. In total, the scene cost a jaw-dropping $2.5 million. You could feel the realism throughout the entire scene. Damn, The Matrix is a killer franchise, am I right? Another awesome series of movies that every car fan has watched time and time again is the Transformers franchise. These movies have transcended into legendary status, but one scene sticks out in terms of cost. During Transformers: The Last Knight, the studio really splashed the cash on this movie, spending hundreds of millions to deliver a great product. The most expensive scene was the junkyard scene, when the Transformers engaged in a battle for the ages. This scene cost a reported $15 million. I mean, wow, that's a lot of dough. But I guess when you have to create CGI for virtually every character, you're gonna rack up the dollar bills. Oh, and speaking of racking up dollars, how can we forget about Ben-Hur? This movie was way ahead of its time when it came out in 1959. And it's safe to say that a lot of money went into the movie to make it look so good. One of the most memorable moments during the entire movie was the chariot race scene, when Ben took on Masala's unbeaten horses. To film this scene, over 1,000 workers were hired to carve out the arena. 15,000 extras were employed as fans and contestants, 78 horses were used, and 18 chariots were built. The entire scene took 3 months to film, and the cost for this epic scene was an estimated $4 million. What? There have been entire movies created for less than the cost of this one stunt. Crazy. And keep in mind, that was 1959. Another stunt that cost a ridiculous amount of money occurred on the set of Cliffhanger, starring action megastar Sly Stallone. During the film, a very dangerous stunt was shot, and a stuntman had to cross a rope between two planes without a safety harness. You heard me, no safety equipment was used. Because this scene was so dangerous, it was meticulously planned. And you won't believe what the final cost of the scene was: $1 million. We hope the stuntman got paid enough, because he genuinely risked his life to film this stunt. Now, the last stunt on our list blows every other stunt out of the water. I'm talking about the Battle of Borodino scene in 1967's War and Peace Part 3. This scene was wild. It had everything going on. Explosions, hundreds of extras running around. The entire scene lasted over an hour and took months to film. So how much did a gigantic scene cost to film? I hope you're sitting down. Wait for it. $330 million adjusted for inflation in today's cash. That's more than the budget for most blockbusters. And the studio blew it on one scene. So, from the slick swinging scenes that made The Amazing Spider-Man an awesome film, to the Battle of Borodino in War and Peace Part 3, those were the most expensive stunts in Hollywood history.